Right. So sometimes when people ask where I live and I say Bottom Farm, they laugh and they apologise, go, what was that? And yes, it is bottom as in bum. So we are at Bottom Farm in Hargrave, which is at the bottom of the village. And I'm going to talk today a little bit about what we do on our farm, a little bit about sustainability and carbon neutrality. And with COP26 going on, this is very much in the headlines at the moment. And also, first of all, I'm going to talk a little bit about Leaf. Now, you're all here today because Leaf has organised this event, and Leaf, it stands for, and I'm sure you all know this, Linking Environment and Farming. And it's a great organisation that I've been part of for the last nearly 30 years. And I think this year Leaf is 30 years old. So it's been around a while now, probably older than some of the teachers that are listening, maybe. It's a great organisation, and it does three different things. And I joined it because I came back to our family farm. I'm a fourth generation farmer in Northamptonshire. We grow crops, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. And I was just interested in what I can do on our farm to be more sustainable and maybe do things better and look after wildlife and biodiversity, as well as growing good, healthy, nutritious crops. And Leaf was an organisation when I joined that had just started, and I thought, well, this looked interesting, and I sort of got in touch with them. And Leaf, they help farmers, first of all, identify better ways of farming. And they do something. I've got this here, and behind the camera, by the way, we've got Gina with us this morning. So Gina's helping me do the technology. And if you hear another voice come in, it's Gina telling me because I've gone off on a tangent. So thank you, Gina, and I apologise if I do go off on a tangent. But anyway, this is the Leaf wheel. It's nice and colourful, and actually, right at the centre of the whole concept of Leaf is integrated farm management. It's a bit of a mouthful, I admit, but actually it's very common sense. And what Leaf does, it looks at all these different things around a farm. And in a minute, I'm going to talk about some trees we've planted, and which could be part of the landscape and nature conservation. And then we're going to maybe talk about our crops. And with our crops, we've got soil management. And we've got water management here. Behind me here is a little stream. You can't see it on the camera, but I assure you it's there. And what Leaf does, an integrated farm management, it looks at how all of these things interact. Because in farming, just as in life, lots of things interact with each other. And a good example of that, if you're young, healthy people and you eat a healthy diet, and a varied diet, and we've heard of we need five fruit and vegetable portions a day, and other good sources of food, the chances are you grow up to be a strong, healthy person. Mix a healthy diet with a good bit of exercise and a healthy lifestyle, and everything interacts together. And Leaf is like that. If we look after our water and we look after our soil, it helps me grow good crops. If I look after the nature and the landscape around us, it's not only a nice environment to live in and for people to appreciate as they walk their dogs and cycle on their bicycles around the countryside, but it's actually good for me as a farmer as well. So it is a common sense approach to agriculture. And it has nowadays, with the move to appreciating global climate change and carbon emissions and sustainability on a global level, with deforestation and fossil fuel mining, all of these things go to help us make a better climate, better nature, better society. Because if we're growing good food and we're providing good habitats for people to enjoy in either parks around the countryside or in our case on farms, society can appreciate that as well. And also a big word here, economy. So at the end of the day, if we're doing everything right, it's hopefully going to provide good, healthy, nutritious food for society, but also it's going to provide a living for me as the farmer. And if I can earn a living, then I can look after our crops and nature, and everyone's happy. So a grown-up term is it's driving a circular economy, or in this case, a circular agriculture, because everything revolves around, and it's a bit like a bicycle wheel, and Leaf's at the center of it, and all the other bits, they're on the spokes, but everything comes back to the middle in here where Leaf is. So I joined this organisation of Leaf to help me find better ways to farming. hopefully over the years I'm doing some of that, and we're going to talk about it. And then also we'll talk a bit later about something called the leaf mark, which is then a logo that goes on food. And if your parents or you go shopping in the shops and you find food with that logo on it, you know it's been done to high standards. And I don't know how we're doing for time, but we're here because I'm also a leaf demonstration farmer. So sometimes we have school visits around. Today we're doing lots of schools, and it's on Zoom. So it's great to welcome you to Bottom Farm. So the first thing we're going to talk about, we're on the edge of a field here. We're going to talk about trees. So trees are very good. As you've probably heard, trees are really good for absorbing carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. So we're here at the moment in COP26, lots of nations have signed up to stop deforestation, which is absolutely, if they pull it off, that would be absolutely wonderful. But also, we need to plant trees as well. And these trees here, so if Gina pans around, this is a hazel tree. So we planted these trees 2 years ago, and we had some people from the local village come and help us plant them. And at the moment, they're very small. They're protected in, if you come here, Gina, this here is actually a tree. It's protected in a guard to stop the rabbits eating. And I don't know whether you can see, but I don't know if you can guess what that is. It's a tree. You use it, maybe it's seen at Christmas time to make wreaths, and it's a holly tree, a holly bush. So we've got a variety of trees here. Here's another one. This is a bigger one. This is a type of willow tree. But all together in this small corner of this field, there's over 100 trees we've planted. And in a few years' time, they will grow. And just behind us here, if Gina pans around, is some great big, that's a big poplar tree that I planted probably 25 years ago. So these little trees here in time will grow into big trees. And why do I like trees? I like trees because, as I say, they're good for absorbing carbon dioxide. So they absorb that out of the air. And then it's called photosynthesis, and then they give off oxygen for us to breathe. So it's good for the climate. Also, trees are good for nature. So here in this area, it may look like lots of weeds, but it's habitat for little voles and lots of little creatures. You may plant trees that bear fruit and nuts. So say hazelnuts. We've got the hazel tree behind us. Could be apples and pears and fruits that you may eat when you're in your food. So they are a source of food. But then also trees are a source of timber. So these poplar trees behind us, they will be cut down when they're big enough to make furniture. And trees can be used in construction for houses, for furniture. And in some countries, wood is still very much used for a source of fuel. So they have lots and lots of benefits. And over the years, we've planted many, many trees on our farm. So how are we doing, Gina, for time?
Good.
We're good.
Yeah.
So while we're here, I just want you, I don't know whether you can see, up on is a pole there. So that's an owl box. Can you see that? So we've made an owl box here. So it's a good, because it's in a corner of a field and we've got water behind us. We've got the field in front of us, which we'll see in a minute. The trees around the edge of the field here with some grass margins as well. We've put several owl boxes up over the years around the farm. That one, I have seen a big eagle owl in it before, but I haven't seen anything in it for a while. But we've got some other owl boxes, and there's a couple in particular that have always had barn owls in them. And it's lovely. Very occasionally, if you're lucky, you come just at dusk and you see the barn owl fly out of the box and it hovers over you off on its night hunting. So this is where farms are doing all sorts of different things, looking after the conservation, the wildlife, and then obviously as well growing food. So that's a little bit about us, about the trees. But I'm going to take you on a little walk here. We're going to walk across the field, and then we're going to talk a little bit more about what we do. So in a minute, we're going to look at a field and maybe dig a few holes and see what we find. But I don't know whether any of you have seen what we do on our farm. But as well as growing crops, we also make a food product that we sell to shops all around the country. And I don't know, some of you may even, your parents may even have this in their kitchen at home. And we make, it's cold pressed rapeseed oil. And we sell this in shops all around the country and in restaurants and pubs and various places. And this is what we make. Now, I did mention the leaf logo. And if you can see here, that little logo on there shows that this is grown, or it's produced from food that is grown on the farm that is produced to the leaf mark standard. So we get independently audited every year, and it's very tough to make sure we're doing all the correct things. And when we get that on there, we're very proud to have it, because people, even if they don't recognize that, they know that that product has been produced with care and sensitivity in a sustainable manner. And it's a very healthy oil. It's really good. You can do your roast potatoes with it. You can put it on salads and make it into salad dressings. You can do all sorts of bits and pieces with it. Maybe if any of you do home economics at school, maybe you can ask your teachers, maybe try practicing cooking with this. But some of you may not know what rapeseed looks like. Well, we haven't got a field of it here at the moment. But rapeseed, it's in the springtime, in April and May. If you look over the countryside, it's big yellow fields and big plants. But then after those yellow fields have been pollinated by the bumblebees around, it makes the seeds. And I've just got a tiny little bit of a rapeseed plant. And when this is fully grown, I'm standing here, this rapeseed plant is this sort of height. So this is only the very top of one. But in these tiny little pods, this is left over from last harvest. If I can take this off and put this down, I don't know, Gina's doing a good job here. Hopefully you can see this on the camera. But in there are some tiny little, can you see those coming out? Some tiny little seeds. So we will come through the field with a big combine harvester, and I've got a whole bucket of it here. There's a big bucket of the seeds, but we'll come through with the combine harvester and it chops this up. And that goes through the combine harvester and it rubs it, and all the straw goes out of the back of the combine onto the soil, and we talk about that in a bit. And then we get these seeds, which we store carefully in our barn in the farmyard, and then we press them to make oil. And that's, so although the seeds are black on the outside, if I can squeeze one with my finger now, I don't know how good that is, but can you see it's a yellow color there? It's blowing around a bit. And inside that seed, there's nearly half of that is oil. So we, back in the farmyard, we squeeze the seed and we then make the oil, and we put the oil in a bottle and we sell it. And to do that, it takes lots of energy. And actually on the factory roof of our oil factory, we've got solar panels. And part of our what we do on trying to curb our carbon emissions is that actually now 30% of all the electricity we use in our business is powered by the sun, which is really, really good. So that's something we do on the farm. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about carbon as we go, but we're still okay for time? Quarter past. So this is good. So we're walking across here. This is a field of wheat. And I can hear someone in the distance. They're walking on a footpath. I think they're shouting at their dog. So we're going to come to a footpath. We might see some people because we have footpaths and bridle paths across our fields. So if you're out in the countryside, you can go for a walk on farms and all around the country. And, you know, farmers, hopefully most of them are welcoming and enjoy. Especially since COVID, many more people are out in the countryside enjoying it, which I think is lovely. So whether we see someone today or not, I don't know. But yes, this is a field of wheat, and we're going to head over to another field. But if Gina wants to pan around, I don't know, can you see the hedge here we've planted? It's a lovely time of year at the moment. So we are in autumn, and this is a hedge that my father and I planted back in the 1990s. Next to a ditch, so it's got water the other side of the hedge. But here the leaves this time of the year, they're all those copper colours and bronze and still a little bit of green. But in that hedgerow, there's lots of different species of trees. I can see there's an oak tree here, then an ash tree, then a cherry tree, and the hedge itself has got hawthorn and field maple. And we'll actually look, Gina, let's go over here and have a look. This plant here, for example, this is a hawthorn hedge, grows really well on our soil in Northamptonshire. And these red berries, we'll leave these over the winter. We can eat them. I don't think they're very nice. I've never tried one, but the birds love these. So it's really good because hedges, again, they do lots of different things. They provide the look of the countryside that we're all used to. They provide food for birds over the winter. They provide habitat. You'll often come here in the spring, and there'll be birds nesting, and you'll see as you're walking around, birds will be flying around and going back to their nest to bring their young up. In the bottom of the hedges, it's tussocky grass here, so it provides habitat for voles and mice and other mammals, and maybe ground nesting birds like partridge might like to nest in there because it hides them away from the fox that will be looking for them. So hedges, I love hedges. We've planted on our farm about 8,000 meters of hedge over the last 25 years, and this is one that's now established, and we manage it, and it looks good. It provides shelter, food, habitat, and also it provides a windbreak. So for me, for a farmer, it's providing shelter against the crops, and it makes the farm just more interesting. I don't know, we can't see, but actually we'll come over the bridge here. We're now on a footpath. We're in another field now, and if you just pan up here, Gina, can you see there's a clump of trees there? So those are some trees that we planted. My father did that back in 1987, so I was at school then, and that just shows you those little trees we saw a couple of minutes ago. They grow into big trees. So those trees have been there growing, and they're still growing, and they'll grow for many more years, absorbing carbon out of the atmosphere, and eventually providing timber, and they'll be sawn down for timber for furniture, and then more trees will be planted. So they are a crop. They're a crop that's will last a full person's lifetime. So I've brought you to this field because this is, for me, I find this a very interesting and exciting field. Now, first of all, we've come up through the hedge, over the bridge, and the bridge goes over what we call a ditch, so that has water flowing in it. I'll just have a look. It's not very impressive, I must admit, at the moment, although it's only just the start of winter, so there's a little tiny bit of water in there. But when it rains a lot, that water will, the ditch will get full of water. And then on the other side of the ditch, I don't know whether you can see this, is an area, it looks like grass, a tussocky grass, where this is an area of actually, it's wildflowers that we've planted, and we've planted lots of these around the edges of the field. Unfortunately, November's not a great time to see beautiful, lovely flowers, because they're there from sort of May through till August, and now they're all dying down ready for the winter. But I'll try and identify a couple, and here's one you might recognize. So this is actually, if I pull that out, take the grass leaf off it, that's wild carrot. And if you look at that, the leaves, it's a bit of a giveaway because they're just the same as the leaves that you'd find on a carrot in the supermarkets. So that's one. Here, this very delicate little one down here, this is called Yarrow. So that's there. And where else? Here, oh yeah, there's lots of these. So these stalky bits, if I can find the remains of them here. And these are the remains of Oxide Daisies. So these are big white petals with a yellow bit in the middle. Big daisies, basically. And there's lots of these grow around here. So in this area, there are lots and lots of different types of flowers and grasses. And why do we establish this? Well, we plant this, and it does, again, think of this integrated farming. This is around the edge of my field. It does many things. One, it provides habitat for insects, for little beetles, for voles again, and mice. And those mice might be owl food from the owl that's living in the owl box, or if there was an owl there. And then the insects that we're providing, like the habitat for, the beetles, they can go off into my crop. And we'll talk about this in a minute. And they can eat the nasty bugs that may be in my crop. So I'm helping nature here, then nature's paying me back and helping me look after my crops. Another thing that the wildflowers do, it provides habitat for creatures, insects like bumblebees. And in Britain, I think we've got something like 50 different species of bumblebees. And bumblebees like to live in this sort of thing, but also when those flowers come out in the springtime, the pollen and the nectar on those pretty flowers are providing food for the bumblebees. So we're providing them a home, and we're providing them a food source. And again, that's good for me as a farmer, because when I've got a field of rapeseed or a field of beans, one of the two of the crops we grow, they need pollinating by insects. So in the morning, the bumblebee might get a breakfast full of honey and energy, or nectar, so it gets its energy. Then it goes off in the daytime and it will go forage around the crops, getting more pollen and nectar. But also by doing that, it's pollinating our crops, so we get a good crop production from it as well. So we've got these next to around the edges of the field, next to water courses. It looks good. I like doing it, and also it's very helpful as well. And what we're going to do, we're now going to go into the field. I'm just going to get a spade here, and we're going to talk a bit about this particular field. So how long have we got? 5 minutes?
10, 15.
Okay, thank you. So this is a field that I've, over the years, I've done some tests on, and we're finding that this field's actually very good for the climate, because we are actually absorbing carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere, which is good for reducing global warming. And this is a field that I can prove it on because we've done the test, but if we're doing it on this field, we're doing it over the whole farm. So I'll just talk a little bit. We spoke a bit about mellow yellow, the oil. But 2 years ago, we became the world's first food company to be certified as two things. One of them as carbon neutral, and that was certified by the United Nations. So we were very keen, and Gina was very helpful in us getting this achievement, that we wanted to be seen to be doing the right thing and actually doing the right thing. So we went to the United Nations, and we got this certification that we are actually carbon neutral, which we're really, really proud of. And the second thing is we're plastic neutral as well. Now we do actually use plastic in the business. So if you open a bottle of oil, in the top of the oil, there's a plastic oil pourer, for example. So it doesn't mean we don't use plastic, but where we do use it, we account for it, and we measure every last little bit of plastic we use in the business. And then we are paying for the volume of plastic we use, which is around 6 tons of plastic, which is a lot of plastic. If you think of crisp packets and fizzy drinks bottles, that's an awful lot of bottles and crisp packets to add up to that weight. But we then pay of plastic. Losing something?
Sorry, Carol.
We're all right. We're still there.
Yep.
Brilliant. Good. Sorry about that. Technical issues here. So we are actually paying for that same volume of plastic. We're giving it a value, so that rather than people throw it away and it ends up going into the rivers and then into the oceans and then into the fish, which is actually not a very good thing to do, we are giving that plastic a value so people can take it out of the environment to then be paid for it to be then recycled. And then if everyone culturally around the world can change their habits, plastic's not a bad thing. It's just what we do with it when we are finished with it. So when you finish your packet of crisps and your bottle of water or a bottle of fizzy drink, don't just throw it over your shoulder, put it in a recycling bin, and everything is good. So we were really proud to be certified both carbon and plastic neutral. And a lot of the work we were doing is on this field. And what we do here, and if we just look at the field, if Gina can pan round, this is a field of wheat. And I should have said, actually on the farm, we grow 3 or 4 different crops. We grow wheat, which is the main crop. So this goes to make flour, to make bread. In Northamptonshire here, we've got Britain's biggest cereal manufacturer, Weetabix. So wheat can go to make Weetabix and lots of other things. And if you look at these straw seed plants, so we've harvested it and we've taken the seed. This is the straw that's gone out the back of the combine, and we'll talk about that in a minute. And then we make turn the seed into oil. We grow beans. They're like broad beans, but when we harvest them, they are dry and hard, and they can go to make hummus and falafels, or they can go to feed animals, and they're very nutritious and high in protein. And beans, they're something called a legume, so they're good for the soil because they absorb nitrogen out of the atmosphere and put that into the soil. So it's all part of a crop rotation. Another thing we grow is barley. And barley, I like barley because it goes to make malt and then to make beer, and I like drinking a bit of beer now and again. And you might like barley because it goes the malt to make Maltesers. So again, it's a crop that has lots of different uses. So on our farm, we grow several different crops. But here, this crop of wheat, it's been planted now a month. It's not very big, so this will grow in time up to make the wheat. And come next August, it'll be this sort of height, and we'll harvest it with the combine harvester. But we've planted this crop of wheat in here, and we went straight into the soil after the previous crop of rape, and we have planted it. We've done something called zero tillage, where we haven't cultivated the ground at all, and we're letting the worms and the creatures on the soil here break down all this lovely stuff from last year's crop. And this, when the worms and creatures break it down, this will go and make healthy, nutritious soil for the next plants to grow. So again, think of that circular leaf wheel and a circular agricultural economy. And by doing crops to grow, but more importantly, as this crop of wheat, it's photosynthesizing, not much today because it's not very sunny, but on a sunny day, the sun's energy is driving this crop of wheat forward, and it takes the carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. It gives us oxygen in return, but while it's doing that, it's growing, and all of this plant matter was made from carbon dioxide. So while the crops are growing, we're constantly absorbing carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. And more importantly, not just what's above ground, but what's going on underneath the soil with the roots. That's pumping carbon dioxide into the soil, and it feeds all the bacteria and the worms and everything. And by not disturbing the soil, I'm locking it down there. It's a term called carbon sequestration. And if we can lock it down there, it means we permanently remove it from the atmosphere. And soils, agricultural soils around the world, ever since farmers started farming 10,000 years ago, have been cultivating the soil and emitting carbon dioxide. And we're trying to turn that around and do the opposite. And just to give you, I'm going to stand up for a minute, if that's okay. Just to try and put that into perspective, this field, if Gina, if you can pan around and see, it's a big field. This field is about the size of maybe 15 football pitches. No more than that, maybe about 20 football pitches. And on this field alone, this field we've shown by how we're farming is absorbing enough carbon dioxide to offset the carbon emissions from about 220 cars off British roads every year. And that's just on one field. So imagine on our whole farm, we can do enough offsetting for 2,700 cars. And then if every farm in the country did it, and every farm around the world could do it, we would actually, it's suggested that farming in this way can reduce global carbon emissions by between 10 and 30%. Don't worry about the figures, but what that means it can offset all the emissions for worldwide transport of planes, trains, ships and cars. So I'm very excited, and because of my work on our carbon neutrality and what we're doing with the soils and with leaf, I'm now working with on a European project, and we are the UK case study. And we've got scientists all around Europe who all get really excited about this sort of thing, but we're working with them and to look to see if we can help other farmers around Britain, Europe and the world to farm in this method. But I think, what have we got? About 5 minutes left?
Yep, 2 questions.
So I'm going to take a spade and just show you something and the soil. So first of all, I'm digging where last year's rape plant was. So we've got last year's rape plant still in there. But straight away, look, well, I found a slug. Slugs aren't very good. We don't like slugs, but the beetles will go and eat those slugs, hopefully. But we've got last year's rape crop, and there's last year's roots still in the soil. But look, right next to it, can you see what's hiding in here? Look, can you see that? There's one worm. There's 2 worms. There's a tiny little, oh, look. There's, I'll be very careful. And look, can you see here? I don't know whether you can see that on the camera. Can you see the wormholes? And look, there's a worm escaping there. There's 3 worms. There's a tiny little worm there. There's 4. Here's a big, oh, there's a big, look at the size of that wormhole. So, and there's another worm. And look, I can see worms here and another worm there. So we've got loads and loads of worms. And I love this. If you were here as in real life, I'll be passing the soil around saying smell it. And look at the size of, wait a minute, let's pull that out. Can you see through that hole there? That's a wormhole. So what the worms are doing, they're taking all this plant material that was left on the surface at harvest time, and they're taking it down into the ground. They're eating it and breaking it down. And as well as worms are the easy ones to see. There's lots of different things under here, lots of bacteria and various things. And people say in a teaspoonful of soil, there's more organisms in a teaspoonful of soil than there are people on the planet of the Earth. So this is alive with all sorts of things. Here's our young wheat plant growing. Now can you just see there? That is that little round reddish orange bit. That is the wheat seed. And look, it's already roots sticking to the soil. So what a plant does, so we planted this. Let's just, if I can get just one plant. There's one plant. Wait a minute, the soil's falling off now. So that's what we planted. We planted that around 6-7 weeks ago. And you can see how deep we planted it. We only planted it that deep in the soil. The soil then had some rain and moisture and it started growing. It's called germinating. And when seeds germinate, they do two things. The shoots go uphill because that's looking for sunlight, because it needs sunlight to then power the energy to then grow. And the roots go downhill. And these roots, and there's lots of them, there's roots coming out here. And these roots are clinging onto the soil, which holds the plant upright in the ground. They're searching for water, and it's providing water because in here there's a lot of water. But also, if we were to get a microscope and look at this, as the roots grow, they would get tiny little root hairs on the roots here. And those roots are exchanging all the nutrition and minerals that are in the soil to help with the sun's energy and photosynthesis to give all the nutrition for the crop to grow. So just like us, to get a healthy crop of wheat or any other crop, you need a healthy diet. So we need a healthy diet and we will grow into healthy people, and the wheat as well. And that is what we're doing in the soil. And by not disturbing it, all that carbon that's been absorbed, look at this, look at the size of that worm. That's a great big fat one. I think I've actually cut that with a spade, but we'll put that back there and hopefully it will live. But there's lots and lots of worms. So what was I saying? Yes, by not disturbing the soil much, we are absorbing carbon into the soil rather than emitting carbon into the atmosphere. And I think on that note, questions. I think we're ready for questions. So I think Tabitha, if you want to start asking some questions, I'll see if I can answer them.
Certainly, thank you, Duncan. So we've had lots of questions in the chat, but I had a few questions sent in beforehand as well, so we'll start with those. The first one is, I think we've touched on this briefly, but how did you come up with the idea of sending your plastic waste to India?
Yeah, so that was Gina's project. There were two companies in the world at the time that looked at what you call repurposing plastic or making plastic neutrality. So we don't actually send our plastic to India. What we do, we measure every bit of plastic we use in the business. So, for example, when we buy our bottles to put the oil in, they come on a pallet and they are wrapped in plastic. Now, that plastic we take off the pallet and then we send it locally where it's recycled to make the next, maybe jackets like this or maybe next drinks bottle or something. So we do that locally. But what we do, we measure the total volume of plastic we then send out to customers. So the label and the plastic pour on the bottle, for example, and that adds up to 6 tons. And then we then pay money to an organization. And are they based in America or Canada?
India and America.
Oh, India and America. And what we do, we're supporting a project in Hyderabad in India. And a good example is when the fishermen go out into the seas fishing for fish, sometimes they catch not only fish, but they catch old drinks bottles in their nets. And normally they would have thrown them overboard. When now those fishermen, they collect them in their boats because when they get back to port, they are paid for the value of that bottle. And then that bottle can be then recycled to make the next jacket or the next crisp packet or whatever it is. So yes, that's how it works.
Thank you. Next question. Do you use any chemicals to help your rape grow?
Yes, we do. So we aren't organic. So that means that think of it like I think of it like a medicine. So this crop of wheat we're growing, all the rapeseed. Then we can use chemicals to help kill the weeds in there. And we used to use a chemical to help kill a pest called the cabbage stem flea beetle. And it's a horrific pest, and it likes eating young bits of rape. And then we have lost our whole crop. For 2 years ago, we lost our whole crop, which isn't good at all. But that chemical, it's found that actually bumblebees and things were eating it. And the bumblebees, it's a bit like me drinking too much beer. They were getting disorientated and couldn't find their way home. So the chemical was banned, which I think is a good thing. So now what we're doing, we're trying to learn how to plant the rapeseed at the right time of the year in the right conditions, so it's got more of a chance to grow. And then remember, we talked about the wildflower margins around the edges of the field. If I've got lots of beetles and other creatures in there, they're hopefully going to come and eat the cabbage stem flea beetle. And a good way to see this, if you were to come out onto this field of wheat in a dew in the morning and with the sun in the right direction, you can see the whole field is covered in cobwebs. And I love that, because that shows me that we are looking after the insects here. And those spider webs, they're all there with spiders ready to trap cabbage stem flea beetles to come and eat them. So then we don't need so many chemicals. So we work a bit, it's a bit like, again, if you eat a healthy diet and you exercise well, chances are you're going to be healthy. But if you are feeling a bit poorly sometimes, you might go to a doctor, or your parents might take you to a doctor, and he might advise some medicine, or you might go to the chemist if you've got a headache and have a paracetamol. But as long as you live a healthy lifestyle, the chances are you're going to need less medicine. And if we look after our crops healthily, they're going to need less medicine as well.
I think we've got about 10% battery left, so probably maybe 2 or 3 more questions.
Okay.
Is that not charging that one?
That's fine. We've got some quick questions coming in all about your rapeseed oil. So how many bottles of oil do you produce, Duncan? That's from 30.
Right. So how many bottles? So if you go in our bottling factory, there's 4 people in actually making the oil. And is one person puts the bottles on the line one end, one person takes them off the other end, all wrapped with oil in and caps on them and labels, and we're producing 1,000 bottles an hour. And when I started the business in 2005, we produced 6,500 bottles in our first year. Now, on a busy day, we can do that in a day.
Wow, that's a lot of bottles.
Yeah, it's impressive. We're impressed. It's good to see it.
Definitely. A few questions coming in about your trees and owls as well. So how old is the oldest tree on your farm? Do you know?
What is the oldest tree?
How old is the oldest tree?
How old is the oldest tree? So we've got some big oak trees, and I would say the oldest ones, they're probably about 150 years old, maybe a bit older. We've got behind us here on the ridge, you can't really see it, some elm trees, and a lot of elm trees died out in Britain with something called Dutch elm disease, but we've got a few that have survived, and I love that we've got some elm trees because they're really quite rare now. So maybe 150, maybe 200 years old.
Thank you. I will have a chat with Duncan, Farmer Duncan, and get any of our unanswered questions answered later on today, and I'll send them to all of your teachers, and then you can have your questions answered hopefully by the end of today or tomorrow. I hope you all really enjoyed the tour today, and we'll be in touch. Thank you very much for joining us.